Hey friends, this is Lisa Alford with Jax Realty. I wanted to come to you today and talk to you a little bit about this huge multi-billion-dollar lawsuit that National Association of Realtors is involved in. It seems to be all over the news with really bad and false headlines, and the stories and articles that I'm seeing out there, again, they're just bad and false. A lot of misconstrued information. And so I wanted to come to you and kind of ease your mind a little bit, set some records straight, and answer maybe some questions for you. Of course, at any time, you're more than welcome to give me a call or comment below the video to ask me any questions that you have or share with me your own comments. So this lawsuit, there was a huge settlement announcement that was announced on Friday of last week. There are some facts that are being misconstrued. The big ones that I'm seeing is gone is the 6% commission, and I've seen your housing prices are about to come down. And I've seen that the way that we do housing deals is about to be set on its head. Um, and in the articles themselves, this kind of rhetoric is being repeated over and over again. And that's not true. What the actual facts are, and I'm going to try to stay away from getting emotional about it or getting stood on my head about it, because that's not going to do any good. So I just want to kind of give you the facts and give you some little nuggets to think about and let you form your own opinion of what you think is going on here. Okay, so the facts are, um, first of all, NAR is not admitting any wrongdoing. Okay, and secondly, they have agreed to remove the cooperative commission from the MLS. What does that mean? Okay, so for years now, for decades, we have listed homes in the listing agreement. We have X%. All right, for kicks and giggles, at this point, we're going to say 6. Okay, so say it's 6% in that listing agreement. Beside that, there should be another little blank where it says that X amount of that commission is going to the buyer's agent. Okay, that doesn't mean that you're paying 6% plus that amount. It means the total is the 6%. And of that 6%, this amount, for kicks and giggles, we'll say it's 3, it's half. Okay, so we've got 3 going to the listing agent and 3 going to the buyer's agent. All right, that makes up your 6. Okay, that 3% that's going to the buyer's agent has always been shown in the MLS so that the buyer's agent can see what they would be getting paid. So it's important for the buyer agent to know what they're getting paid, just like you would want to know what you're getting paid for your job, right? Okay. The other side of this is that many states, if not most, have buyer agency agreements already in place. And in those buyer agency agreements, the buyer has agreed to pay the buyer brokerage a certain fee. Again, that's negotiable. We'll call it 3% for purposes of this video, but it could be any amount that they settle on. All right. But the buyer agent needs to know how much they're being paid by the seller, because that amount has always been in there. And then they can compare it to what was agreed to be paid in the buyer agency agreement. And if it's not enough, the buyer would have to come up with the difference, or maybe the buyer's agent would deduct the difference, or, however that worked out. So a major part of this lawsuit has been that there was a group of sellers that didn't feel like they should have to pay for the buyer agency fee. And when you're looking at it on the surface, it really is kind of a, why is that? Well, when we go back through the history of things and we really understand how the buyer agency fee got put on the seller side to begin with, it makes sense. So years and years ago, I don't even know what year it was, but it was a long time ago. The only agent representation out there that there was represented sellers. Okay, so when you wanted to sell your house, as the seller, you hired an agent to list your house, to market your house, to do that kind of thing. Of course, there was no MLS back then, but they they would market the house and get it in front of the buyers and try to get it sold. The buyers had no representation. They would just kind of come along blindly and buy the house, and it is what it is, and they took all the risk. That was a very bad thing, as you can imagine. I mean, we're not talking getting inspections done, getting surveys done, having somebody who was skilled in negotiations to be able to work on your behalf to get you a good deal. But the sellers had that. So that was really an unfair practice. Okay. And of course, then there was all this hoopla about, oh my gosh, it's unfair because the buyers weren't getting any representation. Well, then we started seeing some buyers agents come out there, but who could afford them? The rich. Okay. So unless you were a rich person, you weren't going to have your own agent going in to buy a home. So you weren't getting all those benefits of having an agent working on your behalf. I mean, you can imagine that's very unfair, right? So somewhere along the line, they decided that the best way to handle that would be to have a fee to list the home, and that part of that fee would be given to the buyer's agent to be able to give equal representation to both parties. It was fair, it was equitable. And that's how that came about. Okay. I'm giving you the quick and dirty of it. I'm not going to go into all the details and history. You're certainly welcome to look it up if you'd like. But that gives you a little bit of the history of it and lets you understand why it's important that buyers have their own agents. If you've ever bought a house, you understand a buyer's agent can save a buyer thousands of dollars. And, depending on the market, which, I mean, how is your average buyer supposed to know exactly what the market's doing so that they can know how they can best negotiate with the seller? They're not going to know that. Your skilled real estate professional does know that. Okay. I'm not saying all agents are equal. They certainly aren't. But when you come into it blind, you really need to know how to negotiate and how to do these things. So getting back to the lawsuit, NAR will also require all agents who are working with buyers to put into place a buyer agency agreement. The buyer agency agreement, again, as I mentioned before, spells out exactly how much the buyer agent is getting paid or how much the buyer brokerage is getting paid. It also spells out all the duties of the buyer agent. Okay, so the buyer knows exactly what they're getting for those fees. So another point of that settlement agreement is that NAR has secured a release of liability for all of its members, and that's MLSs, that's brokers, that's anybody that is related to NAR or with NAR and has not sold more than $2 billion in residential real estate. Now, if you are not a NAR agent, you can still get some protections from that. They have made it very easy, and you can go to the NAR website to learn about that. Another point is that the National Association of Realtors has agreed to pay out $418 million over the course of 4 years to resolve the issue. The changes that have been agreed to are scheduled to take place in July of this year. Now, all of this is subject to court approval, okay? None of this is set in stone. It all has to be approved. So lots and lots of agents out there are freaking out. And I mean, they don't know what to do. I'm seeing all kinds of chatter all over the Facebook pages, and I hear the whispers, and I've had friends calling me and discussing, what are we going to do? How are we going to continue to provide excellent service for our customers and clients when all of this is hanging over our heads? How are we going to be able to do a good job for them? And how are these buyers going to be represented if the sellers aren't willing to pay for the commission? Because key point here, most of them cannot afford to come up with the extra money for the buyer's agent commission. Okay, let's look at where buyers are today right now. They are faced with higher home prices. They are faced with higher interest rates. It's really difficult right now for people to buy homes. We're starting to see buyers come back to the marketplace, and that's really good. But that's just starting, folks. I mean, 2023 was not a good year in real estate. It just wasn't. Okay, because of the higher prices in homes and because of the higher interest rates. I don't think that's a secret that it was a rough year in real estate. And we're just now starting to see buyers come back to the market as the rates have crept down just a little bit and made it more affordable. And now this news has come out, and buyers everywhere are going, oh my God, you mean now I've got to come up with all of this that I had to come up with before? Down payment, closing costs, and all these other things that they have to come up with, including inspection fees and surveys and all this that they have to pay out before the closing. And now we're going to ask them to pay for buyer agency commission in addition to that. These buyers can't afford it, y'all. They just can't. I mean, I'm sure there's some that can, but most of them, they can't. So what are we going to do? Are we going to go back to the days where buyers are unrepresented? Well, guess what's going to happen then? Discrimination. That's what's going to happen, because only the wealthy are going to be able to afford to have their own buyer's agent and their own representation. And that is extremely unfair. And let me point out one other thing. Under the current VA rules, our VA buyers, that means our veteran buyers, are not allowed to pay buyer agent commissions. Okay? So how that's going to work out, I don't know, but there's going to have to be some big changes in VA because that is certainly not fair. Our veteran buyers would have zero representation with the settlement and the way that the VA rules currently are. So are the days of sellers paying for buyer agency commission gone? No, they're not. They can't be. our marketplace will come to an absolute standstill if that is the case. Okay. Now, there are some ways that we can work around this, and I'd like to review a couple of those right now. Sellers can still offer buyer agency commission as a concession to the buyers in the closing. They just won't be able to put it on the MLS. So how's that going to work? Well, we don't know. Right now, it's looking like we're going to have to call on every single house that buyer's interested in. We're going to have to call the listing agent and hope to God and pray they actually answer their phones. Hello, agents, answer your phones, so that we can figure out how much they're willing to pay, if they're willing to pay anything to help the buyer agency commission fee. Another way is that we can, hopefully our lenders will come to the rescue, and lenders will start allowing for buyer agency commission to be rolled up into the loan. There was a time when closing costs were not allowed to be rolled into the loan, and now they are. So hopefully, as a result of all this, maybe we'll start seeing that buyer agency commission will be allowed to be rolled into the loans as well. That will certainly help some buyers out. Now, how are buyers agents going to continue to get paid? Well, we don't know. And it could be that you see a multitude of things out there. I'm sure that a lot of buyer brokerages will still go by the commission percentage method that we've been doing. We might start seeing some agents go to an hourly rate, like attorneys do. Every time you call them on the phone, every time you ask them to look something up on the internet, you'll be charged for these things. And they'll have to keep a log of every time they do something for a client, that they're just logging that time, and then they're charging you an hourly rate. We might start seeing some brokerages that go to a menu method, where the brokerage says, okay, for this service, I'm going to charge this amount. For that service, I'm going to charge that amount. If you want the whole package, it's this amount. And you can kind of piecemeal your way through. Maybe you don't need help with going to the inspection, setting up the inspection, going to the inspection, reviewing the inspection, and having somebody to kind of help you work your way through that and negotiate out those inspections. If you don't need that, great. Maybe that's something that you can take off under the menu method. I think a lot of people, though, will want to see all of the services being offered, because for most people out there in the marketplace, that's just not their wheelhouse. That's not something that they're skilled in. Just like I couldn't go, my husband's in IT. I couldn't go to his job and work the systems that he works. But I want y'all to understand a couple of things. Anytime you see something saying that, and this is the one that's killing me. So I actually saw on a news agency report today that realtor commissions have been driving up home prices for years. Wrong. Realtor commissions have not driven up home prices. Okay. That is just as false as it can get. All right. So the marketplace dictates what we recommend that you list your home at. All right. Whatever you list your home at, it's always up to you. We as realtors cannot tell you what to list your home at. We as realtors cannot tell you what to buy a home at. That is up to you. You are all free thinking individuals who know your own budgets and who can look at the documentation that we give you. For instance, when I go to a listing appointment, I bring about all the stats with me. And I say, this is what all these houses sold for. This is the time that they sold in. And these are the concessions that they gave. And these are how they're different from your house. Okay. I go over all of that with my sellers. And I say, given that, here is kind of where your house falls, where I see your house falls. Now, do you, looking at this, do you see anything different than what I'm seeing? If they don't, great. Then we'll kind of go in that realm and pick a price. Okay. If they do, or maybe they think their house is worth more, then it's up to them what they want to list their house at. I don't dictate that. Okay. And certainly my commission does not dictate that. All right. It's listed at what the marketplace is driving the prices to be. Okay. Now, what is the big thing that has really driven up our prices lately? The last couple of years, let's go back to 2022. Investors. That's where we saw a huge jump in prices. Okay. We had a lot of investors, not only from America, from all over the world, jumping into our marketplace because they saw that that's a market that was doing really well. And real estate has always been a great investment. And they wanted to jump in on that. And then it kind of became a trend. And then we had things like Open Door and, Zillow and all these other companies that were huge companies jumping in and buying these houses. And it was so bad that the first time home buyers couldn't buy houses. we were literally seeing homes being bid up. $50,000 was not out of the question over what the listing price was, with no concessions, with no inspections, which, guys, I never recommend that ever. Okay. But this is what we were seeing in our marketplace. And it drove our prices just through the roof. And what have you seen since then? Well, all these investors have started losing money because they overbid what the market was. Okay. Zillow canceled their program, that iBuying program that they had. It was canceled. It went bankrupt. Okay. We're seeing that a lot of these other companies are going out of that business as well. And a lot of the investors have pulled out from buying these homes. Um, it was a free for all. I have another word. I'll let you guess what that was. But anyway, um, that is what truly has driven up the prices recently. Don't be fooled into thinking that it was real estate commissions. It wasn't. We were doing our dangest to make sure that the small guy was able to get into the homes that they were able to get into. All right. And speaking of which, for those agents out there who think we don't need NAR, because there's a lot of you out there who right now think that NAR is a bad thing, that NAR sold us out, and you're feel free to think whatever you want to think. But buyers need to understand that National Association of Realtors has fought for you for over 50 years. And agents, you need to understand that NAR has fought for you for 50 years too. They have been in our corner. They've always fought for the small guy. They've always made sure that we keep things up and up. They've held us to a higher standard, which has helped us to be a more respected community of professionals. Am I thrilled about this settlement? No. Just speaking truthfully, I'm not thrilled about this settlement. And I do question how this is going to all play out in the future, but I know that it'll all work itself out. And I know that if we trust in the process and we all work together, we will figure this out. And I know that the real estate profession will continue going. People still have to buy homes. People still have to sell homes. And if we throw up our hands and we go, oh my God, and all jump out, guess what? Then it's up to the Zillows of the world. Okay. Or we're going to throw home buying and selling back into the dark ages, and people aren't going to have the representation that they need. So, guys, let's just trust in the process, keep going, and let's all be there for one another. Okay. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to comment below. I'm happy to answer your questions. All right, everybody. I hope that this has given you some food for thought, and I hope that it helps you understand the settlement a little bit. Again, it is not set in stone. It still has to be approved. And don't believe all the news out there that you see. It's a lot of hoopla just to get your attention. All right. You guys take care and have a great day.